All right, guys, so in this video, we're going to talk about good debt versus bad debt. Now, there is no clean definition, but this is the kind of the way that I look at it when I say, hey, yeah, this debt is okay, or this debt is probably not great. So bad debt has kind of two main characteristics. Number one, it has extremely high interest rates. And number two, it focuses on financing liabilities beyond what's reasonable. And a liability is simply something that is only a cost and doesn't contribute value in return. So we have assets and liabilities. So a liability is something that you owe or an expense that you have that is not going to give you anything back. An asset could be an expense, but it's going to increase in value or provide something of value back to you. So high interest rates, typically the first thing we think of is credit cards. And yes, absolutely. So credit cards have generally very high interest rates. Okay. And there's a few reasons for this, but it's not uncommon to see interest rates as high as 26, 28% APR on a credit card. So what that means is if you go and you buy a $100 item and you are carrying that $100 balance on your card without paying it off, that is going to accrue interest at a let's call it a 25% rate. So by the end of the year, if you're just making minimum payments, essentially your total debt has increased to $125 and it continues to compound and compound. They set up minimum payments in credit cards to make the payments easier, a lower monthly amount, but then you could be paying this for years and years and years and years and not realize how much is going to interest. Well, a majority is. So high interest rate. There are other high interest kind of debts that are out there. I've seen some, but I would say anything above 8 to 10% is fairly high interest. Okay. Certainly above 15, but 8 to 10 and above is pretty high interest. And the way that I determine high is how much, if I invest my money, how much of a return can I reasonably assume? And if the interest rate I'm paying on debt is higher than a rate of return on an investment, then it's high. That means all my money is going to be going to debt instead of investments or assets. So, when I talk about focused on financing liabilities, generally speaking, this is kind of consumer debt, right? We might be buying clothes or vacations or just normal spending, but we're just spending too much, more than we haven't got our ratios intact, as we've talked about before. And we're just spending too much, okay? And all of that can just be consumer. So it's just living, right? You could also tack in there, potentially student loans, depending on what the interest rate is. There is some return with student loans. It's a little bit more complicated. We'll get to that. But generally speaking, this is consumer debt. So once you buy clothes, yeah, you can wear it. So it's providing you value, but not a monetary value. There's no monetary return on that. So that is not good because you're going the wrong direction. You're increasing your liabilities and you're increasing the amount of interest that you are paying to others. You're not going to go anywhere. You're moving backwards, quite literally. Okay. Good debt, on the other hand, typically has much lower interest rates, much lower. But more important than that is you're using this debt and it's focused on financing assets. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say you go and you get a mortgage for a rental property. So you buy a single family home to rent out. It's going to improve your cash flow, whatever you worked out on the numbers. You're going to go get a loan for that, a mortgage, 30-year mortgage or whatever, and put on this house. Well, that is debt, but can you see how it's much more different than the debt on a credit card, for example, where you're buying clothes or vacations, right? Those are only expenses and then they're done. Financing an investment property is all of a sudden going to generate some cash flow potentially. That home will most likely increase in value over time, so it's going to appreciate. So on that debt, yeah, you have an interest rate, probably fairly low, but you financed an asset that is actually going to return to you a value above and beyond what you hope for, above and beyond the expense of the debt. So that's the most important thing. The interest rate may or may not be high or low. Sometimes, there's some people that go and flip homes, for example, and they buy homes in cash and then they do all the renovations and remodel and they flip it in 30 or 60 days and they go sell it and earn all their money back. A lot of people don't use their own cash to buy these homes, or at least not all of their own cash. You're like, hey, how did they come up with the cash? Well, some of those are through other types of loans that they get that are not mortgage loans, but they're hard money loans where they say, hey, this is more risky to me. I'll lend you money to go flip this house. but because it's more risky, I need a higher interest rate. So I'm going to charge you 12% interest or 15% interest, okay, while you have my money. And so in that case, yeah, it's a high interest, but you're also going to finance an asset, okay? And if everything works according to plan, then you're going to get a return far and above what the interest expense was that you paid. So it's not strictly about interest rates here. It's more about the purpose and what the debt is for. Are you financing assets or are you financing liabilities? Okay. So as you look at your balance sheet and you look at your different debts that you have listed on there, what are they financing? Are you financing liabilities or assets? Okay. It's important to understand we're always, not always, but financing liabilities to an extent is probably okay, right? As long as it's reasonable and within kind of a set of defined guidelines based on our ratios and how much we want to spend. So it can be okay to finance liabilities. Like you can go get an auto loan. The car is probably going to depreciate in value over time, but it can also be fine to do that. Okay, as long as you're within certain parameters. But financing an asset, you have to do your homework and make sure that it makes sense. But financing an asset is obviously the better way to build wealth. Okay, so I want to cover that discussion really quick, and we're going to jump into some of the different types of debt, how it's structured, and what even is debt, and how are interest rates determined, and all that stuff. But for your assignment in this video is go and look at your debt and see if you have good debt or bad debt. Are you financing liabilities or assets? And are those reasonable? We'll talk about some reasonable ratios for debt coming up. All right, see you soon.
Debt can work for you if you know how to use it.